The morning sun painted the sky of New Haven Colony in brilliant shades of orange and gold. 8-year-old Park Min-ho pressed his face against the window of his family's small house, watching the cargo ships descend from orbit like silver birds coming home to rest. "Min-ho, breakfast is ready," called his adoptive mother Kim Soo-min from the kitchen. Her voice was warm and gentle, the way it had been every morning since she and her husband Lee Dae-ho had taken him in 5 years ago. The boy ran to the kitchen table where fresh bread and honey waited for him. His adoptive father was already there, reading news reports on his datapad while sipping hot tea. Dae-ho worked at the agricultural facility that supplied food to the other colonies in this sector. It was peaceful work, the kind that helped people instead of hurting them. "Can I visit the spaceport today?" Min-ho asked between bites of bread. Captain Chen said his ship brought cargo from the Centauri system. He promised to show me pictures of the crystal cities there. Soo-min smiled at her adopted son's endless curiosity about the galaxy. Ever since he was old enough to walk, Min-ho had been fascinated by space travel and alien cultures. His room was filled with model spaceships and books about distant worlds. "After your lessons," she said, "and only if you promise to stay close to Captain Chen. The spaceport can be dangerous for little boys who wander off." "I promise," Min-ho said eagerly. "I want to be an explorer when I grow up. I want to visit every planet in the galaxy and meet all the different alien species." Dae-ho looked up from his data pad with a frown. "The news isn't good today, Soo-min. The Galactic Empire is demanding higher taxes from all human colonies. Some places can't pay what they're asking for." "What happens if we can't pay?" Soo-min asked quietly. "I don't know. But Emperor Vorthak doesn't seem like the kind of leader who accepts excuses." Min-ho didn't understand much about politics or taxes, but he could see the worry in his parents' faces. The Galactic Empire ruled most of the known galaxy, and their ships sometimes visited human colonies to collect tribute. The adults always seemed nervous when Imperial forces were around. After finishing his morning lessons, Min-ho walked to the spaceport with his friend Kira, a young alien girl whose family had fled their homeworld when the Empire conquered it. Kira looked like a human child except for her blue skin and large violet eyes that seemed to see everything. "My parents are scared," Kira said as they walked through the colony's main street. "They say the Empire might come here soon. They're thinking about leaving for the neutral zone." "Why would the Empire come here?" Min-ho asked. "We don't have anything valuable. Just farms and mining equipment." "The Empire doesn't need a reason," Kira replied sadly. "They take what they want because they're stronger than everyone else." At the spaceport, Captain Chen showed them images from his recent travels. Min-ho stared, in wonder at pictures of crystal cities that grew like trees toward alien suns, and vast space stations where dozens of different species worked together in harmony. "Is it true that humans and aliens can be friends in other parts of the galaxy?" Min-ho asked. Captain Chen nodded. "In the free worlds, yes. Different species trade with each other, share knowledge, even intermarry sometimes. It's only in Imperial space where everyone has to bow to one emperor's rule." Their conversation was interrupted by a low rumbling sound from overhead. Everyone at the spaceport looked up to see massive gray ships descending through the atmosphere. The vessels were ugly and brutal looking, designed to intimidate rather than inspire wonder. "Imperial battle cruisers," Captain Chen whispered. "Everyone needs to get inside. Now." But it was too late. The ships landed in the colony's main square, crushing buildings under their massive weight. Armored soldiers poured out of the landing bays, their weapons already drawn. At their head marched a figure that made the colonists freeze in terror. Emperor Vorthak himself had come to New Haven. The alien ruler was tall and imposing, with gray skin and 4 powerful arms. His eyes glowed with cruel intelligence as he surveyed the human colony like a predator examining prey. Behind him came his personal guard, elite warriors whose armor bore the symbols of a dozen conquered worlds. "Citizens of New Haven," Vorthak's voice boomed across the settlement through speakers on his soldier's armor. "You have failed to meet your tax obligations to the Galactic Empire. This demonstrates either incompetence or defiance. Both require correction." The colony's governor, an elderly human named Park Sangjin, stepped forward with his hands raised peacefully. Your Majesty, we've sent everything we could spare. The harvest was poor this year and our mining equipment broke down. We need more time to gather the resources you require. Vorthak looked at the governor with the same expression he might show a talking insect. Time is what lesser species use as an excuse for failure. The Empire requires obedience, not explanations. With casual brutality, the Emperor drew his energy weapon and vaporized Governor Park where he stood. The colonists screamed and began running in all directions, but Imperial soldiers herded them back into the square at gunpoint. Let this be a lesson, Vorthak announced. When the Empire makes demands, you will meet them. If you cannot, your families will pay the price for your inadequacy. Minho watched in horror from his hiding place behind a cargo container. He had never seen anyone killed before, especially not in such a casual, meaningless way. The governor had been a kind man who always remembered children's names and gave them candy during colony festivals. We need to help the others, Kira whispered beside him. Her violet eyes were wide with terror, but she was trying to be brave. Through gaps in the cargo containers, they could see Imperial soldiers dragging families from their homes. Anyone who resisted was beaten down with shock weapons. Children cried for their parents, while adults begged for mercy that never came. Then Minho saw something that made his heart stop. A group of soldiers had cornered a family of Kalarian refugees near the medical center. The adult Kalarians were already unconscious, but their young cub was awake and whimpering in pain from a broken leg. They're going to kill him, Kira breathed. The Imperial soldiers were arguing about whether alien refugees counted as citizens worth keeping alive. Their leader, a brutal-looking sergeant, was pointing his weapon at the injured Kalarian child. Minho made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Without thinking about the consequences, he ran from his hiding place toward the injured alien child. "Stop!" he shouted at the Imperial soldiers. "He's just a kid. He can't hurt anyone." The soldiers turned in surprise as a human boy ran directly at them. Minho threw himself over the wounded Kalarian cub, shielding the alien child with his own body. "Get away from him, human," the sergeant ordered. "This is Imperial business." "His name is Tak," Minho said, his voice shaking but determined. "He likes to draw pictures of spaceships. He's my friend." The commotion drew Emperor Vorthak's attention. The alien ruler strode across the square to see what was causing the delay in his demonstration of Imperial power. "What is the meaning of this disruption?" he demanded. "A human child is protecting alien scum, Your Majesty," the sergeant reported. "He refuses to move." Vorthak studied Minho with cold, calculating eyes. Here was a perfect opportunity to teach these colonists about the price of defiance, a lesson that would be remembered long after his ships departed. "Child," the Emperor said in a voice like winter wind, "you will step away from that creature immediately. The Empire has no patience for those who harbor genetic inferiors." Minho looked up at the towering alien ruler and felt fear like ice in his veins. But he thought about all the stories Captain Chen had told him about places where different species lived together in peace. He thought about his friend Kira and little Tak lying wounded beneath him. "No," Minho said quietly. "I won't let you hurt him." For a moment, Emperor Vorthak seemed genuinely surprised. In all his years of conquest, no one had ever simply refused his direct command, certainly not a human child barely old enough for school. "You would defy the ruler of the galaxy for an alien animal?" Vorthak asked. "He's not an animal," Minho replied, his voice growing stronger. "He's a person, just like you and me. My mom taught me that all thinking beings deserve kindness." The Emperor's expression shifted from surprise to cold rage. This human child was making him look weak in front of his soldiers and the cowering colonists. Such defiance could not be tolerated, especially from a member of what he considered an inferior species. "Your mother taught you poorly," Vorthak said, raising his energy weapon. "His mother taught him to be brave," said Captain Chen, stepping out from behind his ship. Other colonists began to emerge from their hiding places, forming a protective circle around Minho and the wounded alien child. But their bravery only sealed their fate. Emperor Vorthak saw the spreading defiance and knew he had to crush it completely. The weapon in his hand hummed with deadly energy as he pointed it directly at Minho. "Let this be the Empire's final lesson on the cost of disobedience," he declared. The energy blast lit up the colony square like a miniature sun. When the light faded, young Park Minho lay still on the ground, his arms still wrapped protectively around the Calarian cub he had died trying to save. Emperor Vorthak looked down at the child's body with satisfaction. "Dispose of the alien as well," he ordered his soldiers, "and execute 10 more colonists chosen at random. The Empire's authority must be absolute." As Imperial troops began selecting victims for execution, none of them noticed the small pendant that had fallen from Minho's pocket. It was a simple thing made of common metal, but it bore the insignia of the Terran Federation's military forces. The pendant had belonged to Minho's birth mother, the woman who had given him up for adoption to keep him safe from the wars that raged across human space. She had never told him her name or what she did for the Federation. The adoption records were sealed, the boy's origins hidden to protect both mother and child. But now Park Minho was dead, killed by an alien emperor who thought himself above all consequences. Soon, someone would trace that pendant back to its original owner. Soon, Emperor Vorthak would learn that he had made the worst mistake of his long, brutal life. He had killed the son of General Choi Yuna, the woman-human enemies, called Silent Death, and when she learned what had happened to her child, the galaxy itself would tremble. The boy who dreamed of exploring the stars was gone, but his death would light a fire that would burn across the Empire until justice was served, and tyrants learned to fear the wrath of human parents protecting their young. The message came at dawn on Terra Prime. General Choi Yuna was reviewing battle reports from the outer colonies when her aide knocked on her office door. The young officer looked nervous as he handed her the encrypted data pad. "Ma'am, this is from New Haven Colony, the casualty list from yesterday's attack." Yuna took the pad without looking up. She had seen too many casualty lists over the years. Each one contained names of people who would never see their families again. She scrolled through the names with practiced efficiency until one made her stop breathing. Park Minho, age 8, deceased. Her hands began to shake. She read the name again, hoping she was wrong, but there it was, clear as daylight. The child she had given birth to 9 years ago. The son she had placed with a loving family on a peaceful world to keep him safe. "Ma'am, are you all right?" "Her," Aide asked. Yuna did not answer. She activated her personal terminal and began searching through adoption records. The files were sealed, but her military clearance opened them easily. There was his picture, a smiling boy with her dark eyes and determined chin. The report said he died trying to protect another child during the Imperial raid. "Get out," she whispered. "Ma'am, get out," Yuna shouted, throwing the data pad across the room. The aide ran from the office, closing the door behind him. Yuna sat alone in the silence, staring at her son's picture. She had not seen him since he was 3 months. Oh, she had made the hardest choice of her life, giving him up to protect him from her enemies. Now he was dead because of her failure. For 15 years, Yuna had served the Terran Federation without question. She had won battles against impossible odds. She had saved countless human lives. She had earned the nickname Silent Death because her enemies never saw her coming. But none of that mattered now. Yuna pulled up another file, intelligence reports on Emperor Vorthak. She had studied him before during the border conflicts. He was cruel, arrogant, and believed his species was superior to all others. The reports said he personally killed the human child to make an example for other colonies. "He killed my son," she thought. He looked into Minho's eyes and murdered him. Yuna began making calls, first to her commanding officer, Admiral Kim Taejin. She requested immediate leave for personal reasons. The admiral had served with her for years and knew better than to ask questions when Yuna used that tone. "How long do you need?" he asked. "I don't know. Maybe forever." There was silence on the line. Then Admiral Kim said quietly, "Whatever you're planning, be careful. The Federation needs you." "The Federation will survive without me," Yuna replied and ended the call. Next, she called her intelligence contacts. She needed everything about Vorthak, his location, his security, his weaknesses. She had friends in the spy networks who owed her favors. Within hours, data began flowing to her personal files. Yuna spent the next 3 days studying every detail about the Galactic Empire's structure. She learned about their military bases, their supply lines, their communication networks. She memorized the faces of every high-ranking official. Most importantly, she studied Emperor Vorthak himself. The alien ruler lived on the capital world of Corvana, protected by layers of defenses that had never been breached. His palace was a fortress with energy shields, automated weapons, and elite guards from a dozen species. No army could reach him there, but Yuna was not planning to bring an army. On the 4th day, she began reaching out to old friends. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were the best fighters humanity had ever produced. Warriors who had served under her command in the darkest battles of the expansion wars. The first message went to Colonel Nam Jiho. He was running operations in the neutral zone, hunting down pirates who attacked human settlements. Yuna's message was simple. The child is dead. Are you with me? Jiho's reply came within an hour. Always. Captain Song Hyojin was next. She commanded a fighter squadron protecting convoy routes near the border. Her response was even shorter. When do we start? Master Sergeant Bei Wu Jin took longer to reply. He was deep undercover in an Imperial research facility, gathering intelligence on new weapons. When his message finally came, it said, already packing. These 3 had served with Yuna through the worst fighting humanity had ever faced. They had watched her make impossible decisions to save human lives. They had seen her cry over fallen soldiers and rage against enemies who hurt civilians. More importantly, they knew about the child she had given up to keep him safe. Yuna also sent messages to other contacts, not humans, but aliens who respected her. During the expansion wars, she had shown mercy to honorable enemies. She had made alliances with species who shared human values of protecting the innocent. Some of these former enemies now sent quiet offers of help. A Calarian smuggler offered his ship and knowledge of Imperial security. A Thraxian information broker provided access to restricted databases. Even a former Vorthan military officer, one of Vorthak's own species, sent coordinates for safe houses throughout Imperial space. Yuna realized that her years of fighting had created something unexpected, a network of beings who believed in justice over politics. They understood that what happened on New Haven was not just an attack on humanity, but an attack on everything decent in the galaxy. As she prepared to leave Terra Prime, Yuna looked one last time at Minho's picture. He had been playing with toy spaceships when the photo was taken. His adoptive parents had written that he dreamed of exploring the stars someday. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you, she whispered to the image. But I promise you this. The monster who killed you will pay. And when I'm done, no other child will suffer because of him. Yuna deleted all her military files and walked out of her office. She left her general's uniform hanging in the closet and dressed in simple civilian clothes. The woman who left Terra Prime that night was not General Choi Yuna anymore. She was something far more dangerous, a mother seeking vengeance for her murdered child. The galaxy was about to learn why humans were feared throughout the stars, and Emperor Vorthak would discover that killing a human child was the worst mistake he had ever made. Emperor Vorthak looked down at the child's body with satisfaction. Dispose of the alien as well, he ordered his soldiers, and execute 10 more colonists chosen at random. The Empire's authority must be absolute. As Imperial troops began selecting victims for execution, none of them noticed the small pendant that had fallen from Minho's pocket. It was a simple thing made of common metal, but it bore the insignia of the Terran Federation's military forces. The pendant had belonged to Minho's birth mother, the woman who had given him up for adoption to keep him safe from the wars that raged across human space. She had never told him her name or what she did for the Federation. The adoption records were sealed, the boy's origins hidden to protect both mother and child. But now Park Minho was dead, killed by an alien emperor who thought himself above all consequences. Soon, someone would trace that pendant back to its original owner. Soon, Emperor Vorthak would learn that he had made the worst mistake of his long, brutal life. He had killed the son of General Choi Yuna, the woman-human enemies, called Silent Death, and when she learned what had happened to her child, the galaxy itself would tremble. The boy who dreamed of exploring the stars was gone, but his death would light a fire that would burn across the empire until justice was served, and tyrants learned to fear the wrath of human parents protecting their young. The message came at dawn on Terra Prime. General Choi Yuna was reviewing battle reports from the outer colonies when her aide knocked on her office door. The young officer looked nervous as he handed her the encrypted data pad. "Ma'am, this is from New Haven Colony, the casualty list from yesterday's attack." Yuna took the pad without looking up. She had seen too many casualty lists over the years. Each one contained names of people who would never see their families again. She scrolled through the names with practiced efficiency until one made her stop breathing. Park Min-ho, age 8, deceased. Her hands began to shake. She read the name again, hoping she was wrong, but there it was, clear as daylight. The child she had given birth to 9 years ago. The son she had placed with a loving family on a peaceful world to keep him safe. "Ma'am, are you all right?" "Her," Aide asked. Yuna did not answer. She activated her personal terminal and began searching through adoption records. The files were sealed, but her military clearance opened them easily. There was his picture, a smiling boy with her dark eyes and determined chin. The report said he died trying to protect another child during the Imperial raid. "Get out," she whispered. "Ma'am, get out," Yuna shouted, throwing the data pad across the room. The aide ran from the office, closing the door behind him. Yuna sat alone in the silence, staring at her son's picture. She had not seen him since he was 3 months. Oh, she had made the hardest choice of her life, giving him up to protect him from her enemies. Now he was dead because of her failure. For 15 years, Yuna had served the Terran Federation without question. She had won battles against impossible odds. She had saved countless human lives. She had earned the nickname Silent Death because her enemies never saw her coming. But none of that mattered now. Yuna pulled up another file, intelligence reports on Emperor Vorthak. She had studied him before during the border conflicts. He was cruel, arrogant, and believed his species was superior to all others. The reports said he personally killed the human child to make an example for other colonies. "He killed my son," she thought. He looked into Minho's eyes and murdered him. Yuna began making calls, first to her commanding officer, Admiral Kim Taejin. She requested immediate leave for personal reasons. The admiral had served with her for years and knew better than to ask questions when Yuna used that tone. "How long do you need?" he asked. "I don't know. Maybe forever." There was silence on the line. Then Admiral Kim said quietly, "Whatever you're planning, be careful. The Federation needs you." "The Federation will survive without me," Yuna replied and ended the call. Next, she called her intelligence contacts. She needed everything about Vorthak, his location, his security, his weaknesses. She had friends in the spy networks who owed her favors. Within hours, data began flowing to her personal files. Yuna spent the next 3 days studying every detail about the Galactic Empire's structure. She learned about their military bases, their supply lines, their communication networks. She memorized the faces of every high-ranking official. Most importantly, she studied Emperor Vorthak himself. The alien ruler lived on the capital world of Corvana, protected by layers of defenses that had never been breached. His palace was a fortress with energy shields, automated weapons, and elite guards from a dozen species. No army could reach him there, but Yuna was not planning to bring an army. On the 4th day, she began reaching out to old friends. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were the best fighters humanity had ever produced. Warriors who had served under her command in the darkest battles of the expansion wars. The first message went to Colonel Nam Jiho. He was running operations in the neutral zone, hunting down pirates who attacked human settlements. Yuna's message was simple. "The child is dead. Are you with me?" Jiho's reply came within an hour. "Always." Captain Song Hyojin was next. She commanded a fighter squadron protecting convoy routes near the border. Her response was even shorter. "When do we start?" Master Sergeant Bei Wu-jin took longer to reply. He was deep undercover in an Imperial research facility, gathering intelligence on new weapons. When his message finally came, it said, "Already packing." These three had served with Yuna through the worst fighting humanity had ever faced. They had watched her make impossible decisions to save human lives. They had seen her cry over fallen soldiers and rage against enemies who hurt civilians. More importantly, they knew about the child she had given up to keep him safe. Yuna also sent messages to other contacts, not humans, but aliens who respected her. During the expansion wars, she had shown mercy to honorable enemies. She had made alliances with species who shared human values of protecting the innocent. Some of these former enemies now sent quiet offers of help. A Calarian smuggler offered his ship and knowledge of Imperial security. A Thraxian information broker provided access to restricted databases. Even a former Vorthan military officer, one of Vorthak's own species, sent coordinates for safe houses throughout Imperial space. Yuna realized that her years of fighting had created something unexpected, a network of beings who believed in justice over politics. They understood that what happened on New Haven was not just an attack on humanity, but an attack on everything decent in the galaxy. As she prepared to leave Terra Prime, Yuna looked one last time at Minho's picture. He had been playing with toy spaceships when the photo was taken. His adoptive parents had written that he dreamed of exploring the stars someday. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you," she whispered to the image. "But I promise you this. The monster who killed you will pay. And when I'm done, no other child will suffer because of him." Yuna deleted all her military files and walked out of her office. She left her general's uniform hanging in the closet and dressed in simple civilian clothes. The woman who left Terra Prime that night was not General Choi Yuna anymore. She was something far more dangerous, a mother seeking vengeance for her murdered child. The galaxy was about to learn why humans were feared throughout the stars, and Emperor Vorthak would discover that killing a human child was the worst mistake he had ever made. The abandoned mining station hung in the darkness of the neutral zone like a forgotten ghost. Once it had pulled valuable minerals from the nearby asteroid field. Now it was empty, its machinery silent for over 20 years. It was the perfect place for a meeting that could never officially happen. Yuna arrived first, piloting a stolen merchant vessel. She had changed her appearance. Her long black hair was now short and red, and surgical modifications had altered her facial features. To anyone watching, she looked like another smuggler making a deal in neutral space. She docked at the old loading bay and walked through corridors that echoed with her footsteps. The station still had power and air, maintained by automated systems, that nobody bothered to shut down. She found the main conference room and began setting up equipment she would need. Colonel Nam Jiho arrived 6 hours later. He was a big man with scars covering his arms from an explosion that had nearly killed him during the siege of Proxima Base. But those scars had not stopped him from becoming the best demolitions expert in human space. "Yuna," he said simply, embracing her like the old friend he was. "Jiho, thank you for coming. You saved my life 12 times during the war. I owe you everything." He looked around the empty station. Besides, what Vorthak did to that kid was wrong. Someone needs to make him pay. Captain Song Hyejin came next, arriving in a fighter she had borrowed from her squadron. She was smaller than the others but moved with the deadly grace of someone who had survived 100 dogfights. Her black eyes were cold as space when she talked about the enemy. "I brought weapons," she said, unloading cases from her ship. "Military-grade plasma rifles, explosives, and some special surprises I picked up from arms dealers." Master Sergeant Bei Wu-jin was the last to arrive. He looked tired from his undercover mission, but his mind was as sharp as ever. He carried several data cores containing Imperial military codes and security protocols. "I had to kill 3 Imperial officers to get these," he said, handing the cores to Yuna. They were planning something called Final Solution for the human colonies, mass extermination. The 4 humans sat around the old conference table and looked at each other. They had fought together for years, but this was different. This was not official military business. This was personal. "Before we start," Yuna said, quietly, "I need you all to understand something. The boy who died on New Haven was my son." The others already suspected this, but hearing it confirmed made the situation real. They were not just soldiers following orders anymore. They were friends, helping a mother get justice for her murdered child. "We're with you," Jiho said, "all the way to the end." Yuna activated a holographic projector that showed the galaxy. Red dots marked Imperial holdings, while blue showed human territories. Between them lay the vast neutral zone where they now sat. "Our target is Emperor Vorthak himself," she began. "He lives on Corvana, the Imperial capital. It's protected by 3 fleet groups, orbital defense platforms, and ground-based shield generators. No direct assault could succeed." "So we don't assault directly," Hyejin said. "We use your old tactics. Hit them where they don't expect it." "Exactly. But first, we need more help." Yuna showed them files on their other allies. The Kalarian smuggler, Vex, had sent word that his ship could get them anywhere in Imperial space without being detected. The Thraxian information broker Nala offered access to Imperial communication networks. Most surprisingly, a Vorthan officer named Korvac had defected after learning about Vorthak's genocide plans. "A Vorthan helping us?" Wujin asked. "That's Vorthak's own species. Korvac says there are others in the Imperial military who think Vorthak has gone too far. They won't fight openly, but they'll provide intelligence and look the other way when we need it." Over the next several days, their allies began arriving at the station. Vex turned out to be a cheerful alien who looked like a cross between a bear and a lizard. His ship was old but fast, with hidden weapon systems and sensor jammers. "Vorthak killed my nephew during a raid 5 years ago," Vex explained. "I've been waiting for someone with the skills to make him pay." Nala was different. A tall, thin creature with multiple arms and glowing eyes. She spoke in whispers and seemed to know everything that happened in Imperial space. "Information is power," she said, connecting her equipment to the station's computers. "And I have much information about our enemies." Korvac was the biggest surprise. He looked like a larger version of Vorthak, with gray skin and 4 arms. But unlike the Emperor, his eyes showed intelligence and compassion. "My people were not always conquerors," he said. "We had honor once, before Vorthak corrupted us with dreams of empire. I fight to restore that honor." With their team assembled, Yuna began planning their campaign. It would not be a single battle but a series of strikes designed to weaken the Empire and draw Vorthak into a trap. "Phase 1, she explained, pointing to Imperial supply bases. "We hit their logistics, food, fuel, ammunition, everything there. Military needs to function. Phase 2, we attack their communications. Nala will help us take control of their propaganda networks and show the galaxy what really happened on New Haven. Phase 3, we target their research facilities. Wujin's intelligence shows they're developing weapons for genocide. We stop that and steal their technology. Phase 4, we eliminate key Imperial officials who support Vorthak, make the others afraid to follow his orders. Phase 5, we create rebellions throughout the Empire, show the subject species that Vorthak can be defeated. Phase 6, we get to Vorthak himself." Jiho studied the plan and whistled softly. "This is crazy, Yuna. We're talking about taking on the entire Galactic Empire with 7 people. 8, said a new voice from the doorway. They turned to see a figure in dark armor standing in the entrance. The armor was clearly human military, grade but modified with alien technology. The helmet retracted to show the scarred face of a woman they all recognized. "Commander Park Susie?" Hyejin gasped. "But you were declared dead after the Battle of Kepler Station." "I got better," Susie said with a grim smile. "I've been operating behind enemy lines for 3 years, learning their weaknesses. When I heard General Yuna was hunting Vorthak, I knew I had to help." Yuna embraced her old comrade. Susie had been her protégé during the early days of the expansion wars. Everyone thought she died when her ship was destroyed, but somehow she had survived and continued fighting alone. "That makes 8 of us," Yuna said, looking around the table at her assembled team. "Still crazy odds." "Good," Jiho grinned. I like our chances better when the odds are impossible. They spent the next week refining their plans and preparing equipment. Each team member had specific skills that would be crucial to their success. More importantly, they all shared the same goal: stopping a monster who killed children to prove his power. As they prepared to leave the station and begin their war against the Empire, Yuna felt something she had not experienced since learning of Minho's death: hope. Her son was gone, but maybe his death could prevent other children from suffering the same fate. The hunt for Emperor Vorthak was about to begin. The first strike came without warning at the Imperial Supply Depot on Zarian Prime. The massive facility stored enough food and fuel to supply 20 star systems for a year. Its defenses were designed to stop entire fleets, not small teams of infiltrators. Yuna's team approached in Vex's modified freighter, using forged Imperial codes provided by their Vorthon ally Korvac. The ship appeared to be delivering routine supplies, just another merchant vessel in the constant stream of traffic serving the depot. Security scan incoming, Wu Jin reported from his position at the communications console. His fingers danced over the controls as he fed false data to the Imperial sensors. They're seeing exactly what we want them to see. The massive depot grew larger on their screens. It was built into an asteroid, with docking bays carved into the rock face. Automated defense turrets tracked their approach but did not fire. As far as Imperial security knew, they were legitimate traitors. Docking Bay 7 is clear, Yejin reported from the pilot's seat. Beginning final approach. As soon as they docked, the team split up according to their plan. Yuna and Suzy headed for the command center, while Jiho and Wu Jin went to plant explosives in the storage areas. Yejin remained with the ship, ready to provide cover fire if needed. The depot's corridors were busy with Imperial personnel and alien workers. Yuna and Suzy wore stolen uniforms and moved with the confident stride of people who belonged there. Their altered faces and forged identification passed every security check. Target acquired, Yuna whispered into her communicator as they reached the command center. Through the transparent walls, she could see Imperial officers monitoring the depot's operations. Suzy produced a small device that looked like a maintenance tool. She attached it to the security door's control panel and waited as it decoded the lock. Within seconds, the door slid open. The Imperial officers inside looked up in surprise as two maintenance workers entered their secure facility. That surprise lasted exactly long enough for Yuna and Suzy to draw their weapons. "Nobody move," Yuna commanded in perfect Imperial standard. "We're downloading your files and leaving. Cooperate and you live." One of the officers reached for an alarm button. Suzy's stunner dropped him before his hand moved an inch. The others raised their hands and backed away from their consoles. While Suzy watched the prisoners, Yuna connected Wu Jin's hacking device to the main computer. Data began flowing: supply schedules, personnel records, security protocols for dozens of Imperial facilities. "Package delivered," came Jiho's voice through her earpiece. "Storage areas are ready for fireworks." "Copy that. Beginning withdrawal." They had been inside the depot for exactly 17 minutes. Yuna's training had taught her that most infiltration missions failed when teams spent too long in enemy territory. Get in, complete the objective, get out. As they returned to their ship, alarms began sounding throughout the depot, but it was too late. Vex had already disconnected from the docking clamps and was accelerating away from the asteroid. "Explosive charges armed," Jiho reported cheerfully. "Detonating in 3, 2, 1. The depot vanished in a brilliant flash of light. 20 years of accumulated supplies, enough to feed entire star systems, became expanding gas and debris. The explosion was so massive it could be seen from orbit. "Phase 1, Strike 1 complete," Yuna announced to her team. Imperial forces in this sector just lost 6 months of supplies. But Yuna's real target was not just supplies. It was the psychological impact of the attack. She wanted the Empire to know that nowhere was safe, that their enemies could strike anywhere without warning. Over the next 3 weeks, similar attacks hit supply depots throughout Imperial space. Each strike was perfectly planned and executed, causing maximum damage with minimal risk to the team. Imperial forces began to panic as their logistics network crumbled. The second phase began when Nala accessed the Imperial communication networks. Using her advanced hacking skills and Wu Jin's stolen security codes, she took control of propaganda broadcasts across dozens of star systems. Instead of the usual Imperial messages about glory and conquest, beings throughout the galaxy saw footage from New Haven. They watched Emperor Vorthak personally murder a human child who was trying to protect an injured alien. They saw the massacre that followed, Imperial troops killing unarmed colonists. "The Emperor is a child killer," Yuna's voice accompanied the images. "He claims to bring order to the galaxy, but he brings only death to innocents. How many of your children will die for his ambition?" The impact was immediate. Riots broke out on Imperial worlds as alien populations realized their ruler was not the noble leader they had been told about. Subject species that had served the Empire faithfully for generations began questioning their loyalty. Vorthak's response was predictable and exactly what Yuna had hoped for. Enraged by the damage to his reputation, he ordered brutal crackdowns on any world showing signs of unrest. Imperial troops began executing suspected dissidents without trials. "He's doing exactly what you said he would," Korvac observed during one of their planning sessions. The defected Vorthon officer looked disgusted by his former emperor's actions. "His paranoia is turning the Empire against itself." "Tyrants always make the same mistake," Yuna replied. "They think fear is the same as loyalty, but fear only works until people realize the tyrant can be defeated." Phase 3 targeted Imperial research facilities developing new weapons. Intelligence gathered from previous raids showed that Vorthak was planning something called Final Solution, weapons designed to exterminate entire species. The research station on Corvin Moon was heavily defended, but Yuna's team had advantages the Imperial guards could not imagine. They knew every security protocol, every guard rotation, every weakness in the station's defenses. Susie led the assault while the others provided support. Her modified armor let her move through the station's corridors like a ghost, neutralizing guards before they could raise an alarm. By the time Imperial reinforcements arrived, the research data had been stolen and the weapons prototypes destroyed. "These files," Wu Jin said as he analyzed the stolen data, "they're not just planning to kill humans. They want to wipe out every species that won't submit to Vorthan rule. Then we make sure the galaxy knows about it," Yuna decided. The stolen research data was broadcast across Imperial space, showing every subject species exactly what Vorthak planned for them. The revelation sparked open rebellions on dozens of worlds as aliens realized they were fighting for their own extinction. Phase 4 began the systematic elimination of key Imperial officials. Not random killings, but carefully chosen targets who supported Vorthak's genocide plans. Each assassination was designed to send a message: serve the Emperor's evil plans and die. Governor Thex of the Outer Rim territories was found dead in his private chambers, apparently killed by a weapon that left no trace. Admiral Korax, who commanded the fleet that attacked New Haven, died when his flagship's reactor mysteriously exploded. Minister Vrak, who designed the Final Solution weapons, was found floating in space after his personal transport suffered technical difficulties. With each death, Imperial officials became more afraid to follow Vorthak's orders. Some resigned their positions and fled to neutral space. Others began secretly negotiating with rebel forces, offering information in exchange for protection. "The Empire is starting to collapse from within," Nala reported during one of their briefings. "Vorthak has lost control of over 30 star systems. His own military is afraid to trust each other." But Yuna knew that Vorthak would not surrender easily. The Emperor was gathering his remaining loyal forces around the capital world of Corvana, preparing for a final battle. He had issued orders for all Imperial fleets to return home, abandoning conquered territories to protect his throne. "He's scared," Hyejin observed. "The mighty Emperor is running back to his fortress." "Good," Yuna said grimly. "A cornered animal is dangerous, but it's also predictable, and we know exactly where to find him." Phase 5 was already succeeding beyond their hopes. Rebellions had spread throughout the Empire as subject species rose up against their oppressors. The Calarians had declared independence and were fighting Imperial occupation forces. The Thraxians had joined a coalition of free worlds. Even some fourth-hand colonies were rebelling against their own species' empire. "My people are remembering who they used to be," Korvac said with satisfaction. "Before Vorthak corrupted us with dreams of conquest." As reports of victories poured in from across the galaxy, Una felt a grim satisfaction. Her son's death had sparked something that was reshaping the political structure of known space. But her personal mission was not complete. Emperor Vorthak was still alive. The monster who murdered Minho was still sitting on his throne, protected by layers of defenses that had never been breached. It was time for Phase 6. Emperor Vorthak stood in his throne room on Corvana, staring at reports that painted a picture of complete disaster. His mighty empire was crumbling, and he finally knew who was responsible. The holographic display showed the face of a human woman, General Choi Yuna, the one they called Silent Death. "She's just one human," he snarled at his remaining advisors. "How can one human destroy an empire that has ruled the galaxy for 300 years? "Your Majesty," his intelligence chief said nervously, "our analysis suggests she's not working alone. The attacks show coordination that would require multiple teams with extensive resources." "I don't care if she has an army." Vorthak's forearms gestured violently. "Find her and kill her. Kill everyone who helps her. Kill everyone who might help her." The Emperor's rage had been building for months as his perfect empire fell apart. Every day brought news of another rebellion, another defection, another facility destroyed by these phantom attackers. His reputation as an invincible ruler was shattered, and his subjects no longer feared him. "Your Majesty," another advisor began carefully, "perhaps if we offered negotiations with the rebel groups." Vorthak's energy weapon vaporized the advisor before he could finish speaking. The other officials in the room took a step back, suddenly remembering why they feared their emperor. "There will be no negotiations," Vorthak declared. "Any world that rebels will be burned to ash. Any species that defies me will be exterminated. And this human female will watch her homeworld die before I kill her slowly." Orders went out across what remained of Imperial space. All remaining fleets were to return to the capital immediately. Every loyal world was to send their best troops to defend Corvana. The Emperor was preparing for the largest military gathering in the Empire's history, but Vorthak's paranoia was also growing. As his forces assembled, he began to suspect treachery everywhere. When the Third Fleet arrived 2 hours behind schedule, he ordered the entire command staff executed for suspicious delays. When supplies from the Zarian sector failed to arrive, he had the local governor's family killed as an example. "He's losing his mind," Korvac reported from his safe house in the Imperial capital's outer districts. The defected Vorthon officer was still feeding intelligence to Yuna's team. "Half his remaining officers are more afraid of Vorthak than they are of us." "That's the point," Yuna replied through their encrypted communication link. "A tyrant who rules through fear always destroys himself eventually. We're just helping the process along." Vorthak's crackdown had exactly the effect Yuna had hoped for. Imperial officers began defecting in large numbers rather than risk execution for imagined crimes. Entire star systems declared independence when their Imperial governors were killed for failing to meet impossible demands. On the industrial world of Corvin Prime, workers rose up when Imperial troops tried to execute Union leaders for seditious activities. The planet's defense force joined the rebellion rather than fire on their own families. Within days, the Empire lost one of its most important manufacturing centers. Similar uprisings occurred throughout Imperial space, as Vorthak's paranoid orders pushed more and more beings into open rebellion. The Thraxian systems formed a defensive alliance and began attacking Imperial supply lines. The Calarian Commonwealth declared war on the Empire and launched raids against military installations. Even among Vorthak's own species, cracks were appearing. A group of Vorthon nobles published a message condemning their emperor's actions and calling for his removal from power. Vorthak responded by having their families arrested and their estates burned. "The Empire is eating itself alive," Nala observed, as she monitored communications across Imperial space. Vorthak has turned every species against him, including his own people. But the Emperor still controlled the most powerful military force in the galaxy. As his fleets gathered around Corvana, the capital system became a fortress protected by thousands of warships and massive orbital defense platforms. Any direct assault would be suicide. Intelligence reports show over 2,000 Imperial ships now defending Corvana, Wu Jin said during their team briefing, plus orbital fortresses, automated defense grids, and ground-based shield generators. It would take the combined fleets of 10 star nations to break through those defenses. Which is why we're not going to try, Yuna replied calmly. Vorthak expects his enemies to attack with overwhelming force. That's how military minds think. But we're not a military anymore. She activated a holographic display showing the Corvana system in detail. The capital world sat at the center like a jewel in a crown of steel, protected by layers upon layers of defenses. Look closer. Yuna pointed to small gaps between the defensive formations. Those ships need supplies. Food, fuel, ammunition, replacement parts. And all of that has to come from somewhere. Susie smiled as she understood the plan. We're not attacking the fortress. We're attacking the supply lines that keep it running. Over the next several weeks, Yuna's team began a campaign of surgical strikes against Imperial supply convoys. They would appear out of nowhere, destroy cargo ships carrying food and fuel, then vanish before military escorts could respond. Each attack was precisely planned to cause maximum disruption with minimal risk. The psychological impact was devastating. Imperial crews began to fear routine supply runs, knowing that death could come from any direction. Convoy schedules became erratic, as commanders tried to avoid predictable patterns. Food shortages appeared on ships that had been well supplied just days before. Morale in the Imperial fleet is collapsing, Korvac reported. Captains are refusing convoy duty. Some ships are leaving their positions to search for supplies on their own. Vorthak's response was predictably extreme. He ordered that any ship, leaving its assigned position without permission, would be destroyed by his own forces. Within a week, 3 Imperial cruisers were vaporized by their own fleet for attempting to resupply at unauthorized stations. Now he's killing his own people for trying to find food, Jiho observed with disgust. What kind of leader does that to his own military? The kind that's about to lose everything, Yuna replied. As Imperial discipline broke down, more opportunities presented themselves. Yuna's team began approaching individual ship commanders with offers of safe passage in exchange for defection. Many accepted, especially when they learned that their families would be protected in rebel-controlled space. The defections created gaps in the defensive formations around Corvana. Gaps that grew larger as more ships either fled or were destroyed by Vorthak's increasingly paranoid orders. The mighty fortress was beginning to crack from within, but Vorthak had one final card to play. Intelligence reports suggested he was preparing something called the Final Judgment, a weapon capable of destroying entire star systems. If he could not rule the galaxy, he would burn it all rather than let his enemies claim victory. We're running out of time, Nala warned during an emergency briefing. My sources inside the Imperial Research Division say the weapon will be ready within days. Yuna studied the latest intelligence reports and made her decision. Then we end this now. No more waiting, no more preparation. We go after Vorthak directly. The defenses around Corvana are still too strong, Wu Jin protested. Even with the defections, we can't fight our way through thousands of ships. We don't fight through them, Yuna said with the cold smile that had earned her the nickname Silent Death. We go around them. She brought up a detailed scan of the Corvana system, focusing on an area that most military planners would ignore, the system's asteroid belt. It was considered too dangerous for large ships to navigate, filled with debris and unstable gravitational fields. The Imperials don't patrol the asteroid belt because they think it's impassable, Yuna explained. But Vex's ship is small enough and maneuverable enough to get through. We slip past their defenses, land on Corvana, and get to Vorthak before he can use his doomsday weapon. Her team looked at the scan and understood what she was proposing. It was a desperate gamble with almost no chance of success. They would be completely cut off from support, trapped on the most heavily defended world in the galaxy, going after a target protected by elite guards and energy shields. It's suicide, Hijin said quietly. Maybe, Yuna agreed. But my son is already dead. If we fail, billions more children will die when Vorthak uses his weapon. I'd rather die trying to stop him than live knowing I could have prevented a genocide. One by one, her team nodded their agreement. They had come too far to turn back now. The hunt for Emperor Vorthak was entering its final phase. The Emperor was waiting for them in his fortress, surrounded by the remnants of his once mighty empire. But he had made one crucial mistake. He had underestimated what a mother would do to avenge her murdered child. Soon he would learn the price of that mistake. Vex's ship moved like a ghost through the asteroid belt surrounding Corvana. The old smuggler's hands danced over his controls as he navigated between chunks of rock that could crush their vessel instantly. Behind them, the massive Imperial fleet remained unaware of their presence. Gravity readings are off the charts, Wu Jin muttered, monitoring their sensors. One wrong move and we'll be pancakes. Trust in Vex, Yuna said calmly. She was checking her weapons one final time, a simple plasma rifle and her father's ceremonial blade from the old wars. He's gotten us this far. The Calarian smuggler's bear-like face showed complete concentration as he guided them through the deadly maze. Almost through the worst of it, he rumbled. Corvana's South Pole has minimal defenses. They never expected anyone to come through the asteroid field. 20 minutes later, they broke through the belt and saw their target. Corvana was a beautiful world of blue oceans and green continents, but its beauty was marred by the massive orbital defense platforms that surrounded it like a crown of thorns. The Imperial Palace sat on the largest continent, its golden spires reaching toward the sky. Scanning for landing sites, Susie reported from her position at the tactical console. The palace is protected by energy shields, but there's a maintenance tunnel system that connects to the old mining complex about 50 kilometers away. That's our way in, Yuna decided. Vex, can you get us down without triggering their sensors? Child's play, the smuggler grinned. I've been avoiding Imperial scanners for 20 years. The ship descended through Corvana's atmosphere using a flight path that kept them in the sensor shadows of the orbital platforms. Vex landed in a canyon near the abandoned mining complex, using the natural rock formations to hide their heat signature. As the team prepared to disembark, Yuna looked at each of her companions one final time. These brave beings had followed her across the galaxy to face impossible odds. Some of them would not survive what came next. You all know this is a one-way mission, she said quietly. The palace defenses will detect us once we get close. There won't be time for a careful extraction. We knew that when we signed up, Jiho said with his usual grin. Besides, someone has to make sure you don't do anything stupid. The tunnels lead directly under the palace, Wu Jin added, studying his scanner readings. Once we're inside, Imperial security won't be able to use their heavy weapons without damaging their own structure. They moved through the mining complex like shadows, using Susie's advanced armor to scout ahead while the others followed. The tunnels were dark and filled with machinery that had been abandoned for decades, but they provided perfect cover from Imperial patrols. Motion sensors ahead, Susie whispered through their communication link. 2 guard posts blocking the main tunnel. I'll handle it, Nala said, her multiple arms working over a portable hacking device. Imperial security codes are surprisingly easy to bypass when you know their programming language. The sensors went dark, allowing them to slip past the guard posts without alerting the palace security. They were now directly under Emperor Vorthak's fortress, separated from their target by layers of stone and steel. Energy readings are massive. Up there, Wu Jin reported. He's got some kind of weapon charging in the main tower. This must be the final judgment device. Then we're out of time, Yuna said grimly. Jiho, how long to breach the palace foundations? The demolitions expert studied the tunnel ceiling above them. Give me 10 minutes with the right explosives, but the blast will bring every guard in the palace down on us. Do it. The rest of us will create a distraction. While Jiho prepared his charges, the others moved to different positions around the palace perimeter. Their plan was simple but effective. Multiple simultaneous attacks to divide Imperial attention and give Yuna a chance to reach Vorthak. Charges set, Jiho announced. Detonating in 30 seconds. Everyone get ready to move fast. The explosion shook the entire palace as a section of the foundation collapsed, creating a breach in the supposedly impregnable fortress. Alarms screamed throughout the building as Imperial guards rushed toward the source of the disturbance. Yuna was already moving, climbing through the hole Jiho had created. She found herself in a storage room filled with supplies for the palace staff. Above her, she could hear the sound of running feet and shouted orders as security forces tried to locate the intruders. "Multiple breaches detected," came Hyejin's voice through the communicator. "I'm keeping their air support busy, but you don't have long." Yuna moved through the palace corridors with deadly purpose. Her years of military training had taught her to navigate enemy territory, and she used every skill she had learned. When Imperial guards appeared, she eliminated them quickly and silently before they could raise an alarm. The palace was a maze of corridors and chambers, but Yuna had studied its layout for weeks. She knew exactly where to find her target, the throne room at the top of the central tower where Emperor Vorthak would be overseeing his doomsday weapon. "Imperial reinforcements incoming," Korvac's voice crackled through her earpiece. "My contacts in the military say Vorthak has activated the final judgment. You have maybe 10 minutes before he can fire it." Yuna reached the base of the tower and found the main elevator shaft. Rather than risk the elevator itself, she used her climbing gear to ascend the shaft directly. Hand over hand, she climbed toward her destination, while explosions echoed through the palace below. The throne room doors were massive things carved from a single piece of black stone. They were designed to impress visitors with the Emperor's power, but they also provided perfect cover as Yuna studied the room beyond. Emperor Vorthak stood in the center of the chamber, his forearms working over a control console that pulsed with deadly energy. The final judgment weapon was nearly ready to fire, a device that could turn entire star systems into cosmic dust. Around him stood his personal guard, elite warriors from his own species wearing powered armor and carrying energy weapons. They were the best soldiers the Empire had ever produced, absolutely loyal to their emperor and ready to die for him. "Sir," one of the guards reported, "the intruders have been contained in the lower levels. Palace security is moving to eliminate them." "Good," Vorthak snarled without looking up from his controls. "And when this weapon is ready, I'll turn the human homeworld into ash. Let them mourn their children as I mourned my empire." Yuna felt cold, rage fill her heart as she heard those words. This monster thought he was the victim in this situation. He had murdered countless innocents, including her son, and still believed he was justified. She activated a small device Nala had given her, a holographic projector loaded with images from Minho's life. When she threw it into the throne room, it began displaying pictures of her son playing, laughing, dreaming of exploring the stars. Your Majesty, Vorthak turned toward the hologram and saw the face of the human child he had killed months ago on New Haven. The same child who had tried to protect an injured alien from Imperial brutality. "Do you remember him?" Yuna asked as she stepped into the throne room. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with fury that could melt steel. His name was Park Minho. He was 8 years old. He wanted to be an explorer when he grew up. The Imperial guards spun toward her, raising their weapons, but Vorthak held up a hand to stop them. The Emperor studied this human female who had somehow infiltrated his most secure fortress. "You're the one," he said slowly. "The one who destroyed my empire. General Choi Yuna, the Silent Death. I'm his mother." Yuna replied simply. For a moment, there was silence in the throne room. Emperor Vorthak, conqueror of worlds and destroyer of species, looked at the holographic images of a child playing with toy spaceships. For the first time in his life, he began to understand what he had truly destroyed. "He was just in the way," Vorthak said, but his voice lacked its usual confidence, collateral damage and a necessary demonstration of power. "He was my son," Yuna said, raising her weapon, "and you're going to pay for killing him." The battle that followed was brief, but savage. Vorthak's guards opened fire, but Yuna was already moving. Years of combat experience and a mother's fury made her faster than humanly possible. She flowed between their shots like water, striking with precision that dropped armored warriors with single blows. Susie burst through the throne room windows, her modified armor absorbing energy blasts as she engaged the remaining guards. Jiho appeared from the elevator shaft, his heavy weapons cutting through Imperial defenses like paper. In seconds, the elite guards were dead or dying. Only Emperor Vorthak remained, standing beside his doomsday weapon with fear in his eyes for the first time in his life. "You cannot stop the final judgment," he snarled, reaching for the activation controls. "I'll destroy everything rather than let you win." Yuna's plasma bolt took his hand off at the wrist before he could touch the controls. Vorthak screamed and fell backward, green blood spreading across the floor of his throne room. "My son wanted to explore the stars," Yuna said as she stood over the fallen emperor. "He dreamed of meeting alien species and learning about their cultures. You killed that dream when you killed him." She knelt beside Vorthak and showed him one final image from the hologram, Minho laughing as he played with children from different species in his colonial school. "This is what you destroyed," she whispered.